What's going on, guys? Oh my god, that was gnarly. That was one of the best punches that we've had in a minute. Uh, we've got an exciting one. Now, again, this is going to be some Kupiansk footage. A lot of you guys know there was the recent counter offensive or counter assault into Kupiansk right after Putin claimed to have taken all of Kupiansk. And then Zelensky showed up and he was like literally taking a photo by the Kupiansk sign at the entrance of Kupiansk. He's like, right here, dog. I don't see no Russians. Anyways, and then there was multiple units, including Hartia, Kraken, who is now a part of 3rd Assault Brigade or 3rd Army Corps. Multiple units went in and took a large chunk of Kupiansk back. And Kupiansk has a little special place in my heart because it was the first place that I deployed to back in 2023 when I was in the International Legion, first place I saw combat. So I love the Kupiansk footage. And I clicked through this briefly. There's some things that we've seen and a lot that we haven't. So I'm actually really excited about this. So do me a favor, you guys. We're on the road to 100,000 subs. Yes, it probably should have been 50,000 to start because we're not even at that yet, but I didn't think about that. So we're shooting for the stars. Shoot for the stars, land on the moon, right? Something like that. So please like, share, subscribe, send this video to your brother, your sister, your aunt, your uncle, and also Discord. We keep all of our uncensored footage in an archive over there for our paid members. If you don't want to be a paid member, that's fine. Not pressing you on that. There's tons of other resources and cool stuff over there in the Discord. Let's jump into it, huh? Let's get after it. Turn that shit down. Gee, mini. Let's see. We saw that one.
Hello and welcome to a somewhat new Ukraine war update. Today, our main focus will be on the intense second battle of Kupiansk, which has silently turned into one of Ukraine's biggest recent successes on the battlefield. If you appreciate the effort I put into this video and...
Oh yeah, by the way, this is War Leaks, man. We love his stuff. Subscribe to War Leaks, you probably already have. He's got a massive channel. Shout out to War Leaks.
Want to support me and my channel, please consider supporting it with a like and a comment. It really helps me a lot with the YouTube algorithm. And as always, the full version of this video, including uncensored footage, can be found on my Telegram channel. The link is in the description.
Yo, did y'all hear? Oh, couch end up in the photo. Did you guys hear that Russia's banned Telegram? And there's like multi-millions of users that use that app daily over there just to communicate, and they're banning it. And I think it's largely because they keep falling victim to these Ukrainian scams where they are basically just sending Ukrainian military units money and just because they're retarded.
While the first clearly documented confrontation in the city appeared on social media in November 2025, which surfaced in the form of this video that shows helmet camera footage of Ukrainian special forces engaged in urban combat, Russian troops had already regained a foothold in the city in late September after they had previously been driven out by Ukrainian forces during the First Battle of Kupiansk in 2022. The men shown here, who were from the 8th Regiment of the Special Operations Forces, were on a reconnaissance mission when they came into contact with Russian forces that had fortified themselves inside a building. Due to this and the fact that the Russians had numerical superiority, they decided to break contact, which they successfully managed without sustaining any losses. At the time this video was released, the city was largely under the control of Russian forces, which had already occupied large parts of the area by late October through the infiltration of...
Look at these guys, dude. Look at how they're moving. This is apparently 8th SSO. Did I hear that right? I know a couple guys in 8th SSO. They have foreigners in that unit. Look at this wall art, graffiti art down there. So sad.
Small assault groups.
Great movement, though. All of them fucking pointed up at the windows. Beautiful.
a tactic that had previously produced slow and costly gains in other sectors of the front. This map from the Ukrainian military shows the situation toward the end of October 2025, before Ukrainian forces launched a counterattack from the northwest shortly afterward in order to close in onto the city again. But before the city could be assaulted, a number of surrounding towns and small settlements had to be cleared of Russian troops in order to secure the advance. Due to the heavy saturation of the battlefield with drones on both sides, however, a large portion of the fighting took place in wooded areas. These forests gave Ukrainian infantry a certain degree of freedom to maneuver, but they also provided Russian forces with cover and potential fallback positions. This led to a series of intense engagements, one of which I will now show you to give you an impression of the severity and intensity of the fighting. A short disclaimer: the fighting you are about to see is very intense, and the Ukrainians suffered several wounded in action during this engagement, so I had to cut parts of the footage. If you want to see the full uncensored version, check out my Telegram channel.
Scared me.
Continua aí, indo pra lá.
After the successful recapture of Radkivka and Mirny,
You can see why running out of ammo is so common, and why standard SOP, at least for us, was bring anywhere between like 14 to 18 magazines, which is insane.
Ukrainian forces were able to push into the city and, by mid-December, regain control of 90% of it following heavy urban fighting. A high priority for the Ukrainians was to take the city council building in the center of the city.
Let's look at this part. I want to pull up Deep State, since we can make a comparison real quick. So here's Deep State. Kupiansk is up north, up here. Boom. Okay. So red zone is Russian occupied Ukrainian territory. Gray zone is gray zone, currently contested. Green is friendly. I don't know what this means. Okay, we may have just like bought a subscription or something. I don't know. All right. Okay, so it looks actually the exact same.
By mid-December, regain.
See this, like the red, the Russian part kind of like wiggles down in between the Ukrainian lines here, all the way down into the city of Kupiansk. Actually, they've lost more ground since then, because this is all gray zone now. It's not even red. So it looks like the Ukrainians have done what they have done time and time again in this war, and they let the Russians push and then overextend, and they cut off their all their supply and logistic routes, and surround the units that made it through. Really cool. All right, sorry. Let's jump into it.
Control of 90% of it following heavy urban fighting. A high priority for the Ukrainians was to take the city council building in the center of the city to demonstrate control over Kupiansk, and that is exactly what happened. In January 2026, the Kartia Brigade released a video showing Ukrainian fighters securing the city center as well as the city council building after heavy urban close-quarters combat. Through the battles of Mariupol, Bakhmut, and Toretsk, the Ukrainian armed forces were able to gain significant expertise not only in drone warfare but also already learned costly lessons in terms of high-intensity urban combat. But this time it was different. Instead of taking on the role of the defenders, fighting a delaying action against a demographically and numerically superior enemy, they were now the ones on the offensive. In coordination with drones, they handled the situation quite effectively. When a lone Russian soldier was spotted through a window as he tried to get a better overview of the situation, Ukrainian drone pilots immediately engaged both him and the building in order to support the advancing infantry. The high volume of strike drones not only disrupted and fixed the Russians inside, but also had a suppressive effect that created a window of opportunity for the Ukrainians to assault the building and enter close-quarters combat. Normally, advancing across this open ground would be a nightmare for any soldier, as it is open ground in the middle of urban terrain. That means no cover for the advancing forces, but deep cover and several potential interlocking fields of fire for the defenders. The FPV drones therefore not only functioned as strike weapons but also as enablers that allowed the Ukrainians to storm the building, engage the Russians at close range, clear the structure, and raise both the Ukrainian flag and the flag of their unit. However, the battle for the city was not over. The Ukrainians still had to clear the surrounding areas, as numerous Russian infiltrators remained barricaded inside buildings. These positions had to be cleared by the Ukrainians in painstaking, urban fighting, requiring what can only be described as bloody infantry work. This required a brutal and aggressive approach in a setting where every doorway, stairwell, and shattered window became a potential threat axis.
Remember our philosophy on CQB, right? Just blow that shit up instead, tear that shit down. But when there's an objective that they're obviously trying to capture, like I said in the beginning of this, that they're trying to take the congressional building, or what was it? I don't remember. You can't blow up that building if your objective is to capture it and hold it, right? So you got to do the dirty. Do the dirty.
As a result, we see a high volume of fire, extensive use of both targeted and preemptive grenades, and classic recon by fire to provoke enemy movement and reveal firing positions. Civilians had already been evacuated from the city beforehand, which meant that the rules of engagement gave Ukrainian soldiers relatively free rein in choosing their clearing methods. The men, however, quickly drew the attention of a Russian FPV drone, and this is what happened next. Despite the detonation inside the building, the soldiers happened next.
We've seen this, but I want to rewind it in case you missed it. That was it. The FPV literally flew in their fucking front door.
The men, however, quickly drew the attention of a Russian
So you can see it barely right there. It's flying in. This guy's shooting at it.
FPV drone, and this is what happened next.
There it is. Right in the doorway, dude. Like, just watching drones stresses me out, man. They are the worst.
Despite the detonation inside the building, the soldiers appeared largely unharmed, but they decided to leave the structure. The strike could only mean that a Russian observer drone had identified their position, forcing them to relocate. However, the street had already been turned into an effective kill zone, and it did not take long before a second FPV drone attempted once again to neutralize the Ukrainian troops. Fortunately for them, this attempt also failed. However, they were forced to withdraw deeper into the ruins of a destroyed building, where they once again became involved in close-quarters fighting. While it appears that the Katyia Brigade carried the main burden of the ground combat, the fighters in its ranks were not only Ukrainians. In particular, there were several men from Latin America among them, including volunteers from Brazil and Colombia. If you've watched until now, I just want to say thank you. I hope you'll consider giving this video a like and leaving a comment about my analysis of the battle. You can't imagine how much every single like and comment helps me. Thank you. In the course of the previous reporting on the recapture operation of Kupiansk, a viral video from a somewhat authoritative source predominantly featured footage from the initial liberation of Kupiansk by the Kraken group in 2022, without clearly disclosing this fact. Since I do not really wish to leak or disclose any background information about the SOPs of certain actors here, I will not attribute any deceptive or malicious intent to the externally hired scriptwriters of that video or to the group that released it. Instead, I would simply state in good faith that this decision was likely driven by a combination of sensationalism and the limited availability of usable footage from the recent operation at the time of release, as most of the material from the hot phase of the newly conducted offensive was only released in 2026. In this context, I will now go over parts of several videos from the first liberation of Kupiansk during the Ukrainian Kharkiv offensive in 2022 for clarification purposes. Although both battles were fought over the same city, they differed significantly in their execution and operational dynamics. The video I previously mentioned, which mixed these events together as if they were one, therefore unfortunately created a fundamentally misleading impression of how the recent operation was actually carried out. So consider this a bit of clarification and corrective context. I think the first thing that immediately stands out when watching this footage is that these men carried out a relatively confident, open, and exposed advance into the city, which differed significantly in execution from that of the Cartier Brigade. They maneuvered with noticeable freedom under open skies and used streets without apparent hesitation, seemingly unafraid that their movement would be denied by an omnipresent network of observation and FPV drones. The reason for this is quite simple. Although the first small quadcopter drones had already begun to find their way into the ranks of primarily Ukrainian units at the time, they were not yet deployed on a large scale, and the Russians had not fully adopted this approach. This was also reflected in the way the men reacted to enemy contact, and especially in how and how long they maintained contact with the enemy out in the open. What we observe is a relatively two-dimensional approach that focused primarily on force-on-force engagements between ground troops, essentially infantry-on-infantry combat, at most extending to limited combined arms engagements.
This is what I was used to seeing watching combat in the Middle East, combat footage from the Middle East, right? You would see these basically an ambush on the U.S. soldiers in Iraq or Afghanistan, and then typically Marines would quickly gain fire superiority, and then they would move on the target. They'd radio in, and then they'd move on the target and eliminate it. Very similar to what we're watching right here. And he said this was in 2022 when the Ukrainian military first was fighting in Kupiansk.
The sky above them was not given much attention on the tactical level at that time. This dynamic was largely a result of the full-fledged maneuver warfare taking place at the time, during which Ukrainian forces were actively pushing the Russians back. Although indirect fires were definitely a factor at the time, the Russian kill chain, meaning the full cycle of detecting a target, identifying it, transmitting the coordinates, assigning a firing unit, and delivering accurate artillery or missile strikes, was not yet as well established, optimized, or adaptable as it would later become in the war. In the later stages of the conflict, this process became significantly faster and more integrated, particularly through the widespread use of drones and digital communication platforms that allowed near real-time target acquisition and strike coordination. However, more recently, this system appears to have been degraded again, partly due to restrictions such as the reported shutdown of Starlink access for Russian forces and measures like the Telegram ban, which disrupted parts of their...
It's crazy to me that we're almost in year 5 of this war in Ukraine, and it's taken that long to shut down their Starlinks. But I am grateful that it happened, and shout out to Musk for... it's better late than never.
Digital command and control ecosystem. Based on these factors, the Ukrainians were not only able to maintain greater cohesion between their elements, but also to maneuver in larger formations than we typically see on the battlefield today. It can also be observed that, at that time, the city was still largely intact due to the maneuver-based nature of the fighting and did not have to be taken through the kind of painstaking, methodical urban close-quarters combat that we see today. Tactically, the Ukrainians were vastly superior to the Russians at that time, and the Russians committed a series of fatal mistakes. One particular incident shown here clearly illustrates just how much the Ukrainians had managed to surprise them. In this footage, Ukrainian fighters encounter a lone Russian soldier hiding in a toilet house and open fire at extremely close range. Naturally, this has to be blurred here on YouTube and can only be shown in full in the Telegram version. Perhaps I will go over the first battle for Kupiansk in more detail in a separate video, but believe me, there is much more to come in this one. One particularly impressive video, for example, shows slow-motion footage of Ukrainian forces shooting down a Russian Shahed drone with a minigun fired from a helicopter. The Russians once released an equally impressive, high-quality video showing the interception of a drone using a Russian GSG minigun equipped with a Cred thermal imaging sight. In this video, a Ukrainian F-16 shoots down a Russian drone at close range using either an AIM-120 AMRAAM or an AIM-9 Sidewinder missile. There were conflicting reports about which missile was used, and I am not enough of a missile expert to say with certainty. Perhaps one of you can provide more insight in the comments about what was likely employed. The engagement was also recorded from another angle, so make sure to watch that as well, and feel free to discuss it in the comments.
Dude, who was this cameraman? Fucking A++, S tier. This was just recently because I made the mistake of saying that that was taken out by an air-to-air missile. And everybody in the comments rightly corrected me, saying that that fighter was using his cannon to take it out.
This archival video, filmed from the cockpit of a Ukrainian Su-25, shows the moment its wingman crashed after being shot down by Russian manpads. But this was nothing compared to this video, which shows another Ukrainian Su-25 recording itself being shot down by a Russian surface-to-air missile. As in the previous case, the pilot unfortunately did not make it. However, this was not the first case of a Ukrainian aircraft recording itself being shot down by enemy anti-air fire while flying at low altitude. Already in 2014, a Ukrainian helicopter captured the moment it was struck and brought down by a Russian anti-air missile. Back then I already had the video on my channel, but YouTube tricked me into deleting it together with all footage from the wars in Ukraine, Iraq, Syria and Afghanistan. More on that one day in a future video. This Russian soldier, who was riding in the back of a cargo truck, suddenly encountered a Ukrainian FPV drone approaching the vehicle and immediately opened fire. However, his attempt to intercept the drone failed, and it crashed directly into the open bed of the truck. The Russians instantly jumped out of the vehicle to avoid the expected detonation. Fortunately for them, the explosion did not occur, and the men escaped with nothing more than a massive scare. I have spoken before about the mud as the hidden side boss in Ukraine, and here we once again see a video that perfectly illustrates why the mud is such a frustrating and persistent enemy. This Russian National Guard soldier...
If you've been here from the early days of the channel, you know when I used to talk about the mud during like this, just the mud in Ukraine in general, but specifically like winter time, and how I would refer to it as its whole own element. Like there's solids, there's liquids, there's gases, and then there's Ukrainian mud. That stuff it's hard and it's soft at the same time, and it's sticky, but it's also slippery. Dude, it's crazy. It's one of those things where it's like, why is he explaining mud? Like, we know what mud is. It's different, dude.
This Russian National Guard soldier made the mistake of reflexively picking up a stun grenade during a training exercise, most likely intending to throw it back. This is what happened next.
We saw that video, and I didn't know it was a stun grenade. We got who is this? Mark Root from NATO. So currently, you guys, it is February 17th, and there are supposed to be peace negotiations happening in somewhere in Europe. Between Russia, US, and Ukraine. We are currently being struck with a massive... Ukraine is under alert and being struck by ballistic missiles for over 24 hours. There's also an Orezhnik alert, which is Russia's hypersonic missile that can reach anywhere within Ukraine within just it's like just over a minute, and it can hit... It can reach very far. It's what the West calls Russia's super weapon, the Orezhnik. So my point is, I wish these delegates and countries would stop wasting their time with these negotiations. It is such a waste of time. The only thing that needs to be negotiated is more pressure on Putin. Point blank, period. The only thing he respects is strength. We know that. We've talked about that for years at this point. Um, and all these peace talks and negotiations are just to buy time for Putin to continue maneuvering and continue taking more ground and or try to take more ground in Ukraine and kill more Ukrainian people, civilians, women, children, and soldiers. Stop feeding into the bullshit. It like I'm no politician, but if I were in some kind of a political seat and I was completely corrupted, like our special envoy and like Steve Witkoff and other dude, the snake-looking guy, the rat. If I was in their position, I'd be like, absolutely not. I'm not meeting with the Russian delegation because it's a waste of time. That's it. These guys, that's how you know that there's more in it for the US, right? These guys wouldn't be just wasting their time for no reason. These guys are getting something out of this deal, but we won't get into that. I appreciate you guys. Please like, share, subscribe. Road to 100,000. Check out War Links, like I said before. It's got a great channel and Discord link in description. I love you guys. See you in the next video.